Welcome to the Commonwealth Policy Center's Candidate Forum. I'm Richard Nelson, CPC's Executive Director and your host. Kentucky's primary elections are on May 21st, and there are several choices that the voters will have at the ballot box, including a primary for House District 95. The incumbent is Andrea Lafferty-Tackett, and there are two Republican challengers vying for that seat. One of them is David Pennington, who is joining us for this forum. David, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
David, this is an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to voters and tell them why you're running, what you believe in, what you do if you were elected. And let's start back to 2022, look back at 2022 when you ran for the Republican nomination for that House seat. You ran against David Spencer, and it looks like this is a rematch. You came up a little bit short there, but first tell us why you're running again. Why did you run back in 2022 and why you're running again in 2024?
I've served the country my entire life, served in the Marine Corps, retired as a federal law enforcement officer, spent my entire life serving this country, and we're just seeing it go down. The state go down, the country go down, and especially Eastern Kentucky go down. You know, we keep electing the same, and nothing ever changes. You know, they all talk about this, that, and the other, but they never do this, that, and the other. So last year, I really wasn't prepared. I didn't really know anything about politics. You know, I didn't quite understand the game as well as I should. And we just discussed it, and we jumped in there at the last second. And, you know, we lost. I really didn't get a chance to campaign a lot. I didn't get a chance to do anything, spread my name, my message. And this time I'm hoping it's a little different.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You're in Prestonsburg, correct?
I am. I live in Prestonsburg, Kentucky.
Is that your hometown? Did you grow up in Prestonsburg?
I grew up in the county over in Johnson County, and my wife is from here in Floyd County, and we just decided to split the difference between where my dad lived and where her parents lived, and we've been here for about 10 years.
Okay. So you have served the country. You are a Marine veteran.
Yes, sir.
You have worked in the prison system.
Yes, sir.
Tell us what that was like working, first of all, being a Marine. Where did you serve? Tell us a little bit about your experience there.
I joined when I was 17. That's in 2003. I really didn't have a choice. You know, my father was in prison. My mother was gone. So 2003 wasn't necessarily a great time to join the Marine Corps. You know, the wars were just ramping up and kicking off. I actually went to join the Air Force, and I really didn't know anything about the military at that point. And a Marine recruiter came out in Pikeville, Kentucky, and, you know, they're the best salesmen in the world. And they had me signing papers within about a week. I joined. In September of 2003, I went to Parris Island, and by that time next year, I was in Fallujah, Iraq.
Oh, boy. Of course, as a young man, it's quite an experience just to join the military. It's totally another experience to be put in a war zone and to defend your country. I appreciate your service, David. Thank you for serving our country, and appreciate that. I know that was a sacrifice. What did your experience in the Marines do to shape you as for the person you are today?
Well, you start at the bottom in the Marine Corps. I mean, you're pretty much worthless when you go in. And, you know, it's just you compete against your peers to work your way up the chain. There is no give-me's, there is no anything. So you learn responsibility as a young person, determination, grit. It's pretty much molded my entire life on how I do everything.
Okay. So you served for 20 years. What parts of the world were you stationed in?
No, I only served in the Marine Corps for 4 years.
Okay. Gotcha. So what other service areas besides being in Fallujah?
I was stationed in Camp Pennington, California, which is in San Diego, but we spent the majority of time in Iraq. You know, there was a high deployment tempo back then, and, you know, we'd deploy, come back, train up, deploy.
Okay, very good. Very good. Tell us a little bit more about your background, other work experiences, family. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. Again, this is an opportunity for you to talk to the voters and let them know who
So
you are.
when I got off active duty in 2007, I came back home and went to work for the federal prison system here in Martin County, Kentucky. USP Big Sandy, which is a pretty rough outfit.
Hmm.
It's a pretty violent prison.
Hmm.
I worked there for several years, and I decided to take a break from that, and I went to work for the U.S. Forest Service.
Hmm.
I worked out west as a hotshot firefighter, and done that for quite a few years. Decided that I wanted to come back home because, most of that takes place in like Arizona, California, Washington. I came back to the federal prison. I worked for a few more years, and I retired. I retired out federal service. I'm a disabled veteran, and now I just spend my time raising my family and trying to make things better.
Okay. Very good. So, wife, and I understand you have an infant daughter, correct?
I do.
Okay. Very good. And that's a full-time job, just raising children, isn't it?
And it is.
Uh, Yeah. So tell us about some of your guiding principles when it comes to approaching politics. What are some of the things that shapes your thinking as far as approaching the issues? For example, do you have any political mentors or people you've looked up to in the political realm, or maybe pastors or other teachings that have shaped how you think about this country and politics?
See, I'm absolutely a Christian. I believe in God 100%. There's no question there.
Hmm.
I don't really have any people I looked up to in politics because, there's very few people to look up to in politics.
Hmm.
They,
Hmm.
you know, my beliefs as a Christian definitely decide a lot of my values and opinions on certain subjects. And on the other ones, I just look at the life that I've had, the way I came up, more of the hard way. And,
Hmm.
I see a government full of greed and deception and, theft. And, they kill the middle working class, and it just shouldn't be that way.
I understand. So, what are some of your non-negotiable principles, David, when it comes to politics? So, for example, the right to life issue has been a very, very important issue for voters in Kentucky. Uh, Kentucky is now a pro-life state. There are no abortion centers that are open, and this has come about because of good people standing in the gap and working to restore the sanctity of life for the unborn. Where do you stand on the life issue?
I'm 100% pro-life. There's no question.
Okay. Okay.
You'll never see me vote any other way.
Okay. Another important issue is religious freedom. We've seen, particularly the federal government, come down against religious freedom for Christians in some cases. I think of the issue where Jack Phillips, for example, the cake baker in Colorado, was asked to provide a cake for a same-sex wedding ceremony. Then he was asked to provide a transgender reveal cake. He chose not to because it violated his conscience, and he was dragged through the court system. And he was eventually exonerated from that. But I share that example because that's one strong example of how religious freedom and conscience rights were steamrolled by the government. Where do you stand on the religious freedom issue?
I'm very familiar with that case, and no business owner, uh, no one of any faith, nobody should be made to do anything that they don't want to do in regards to that. So if he didn't want to make those cakes, that's his right as a free American and business owner.
Okay, very good. Another important issue, especially here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, our Second Amendment freedoms. That's the right to keep and bear arms. It seems that oftentimes after a mass shooting, as tragic as they are, you see a call for gun control, either registering firearms or red flag laws, some kind of restriction. Where do you stand on the Second Amendment? That's the first question. And then secondly, as far as mass gun violence, how would you address a mass shooting situation?
I'm the most pro Second Amendment person on the planet. I own over 200 firearms. I have many NFA items, suppressors, short-barreled shotguns, short-barreled rifles. First, I think the NFA and ATF is unconstitutional. I shouldn't have to pay $200 and wait for months on end to be able to put a stock on an AR pistol or to buy my suppressors or anything else. That's ridiculous. That prices a lot of people out of being able to do those things. Second,
Okay.
mass shootings. The more good armed people we have, there's always going to be evil people in this world. It's been that way since the dawn of time. The more armed, trained people we have, the less violence we will have. And we can see that, for example, right here in East Kentucky. We have a very small amount of violence, but we have a large drug problem. Now, usually they go hand in hand, but they don't here because people know if you break into a random old person's house, you're going to get shot in the face. And that's just flat out how it should be.
Yeah. So that's one of the issues, again, in the legislature is that there are people who are calling for gun restrictions. So am I hearing that your response would be to allow armed people? I think so. For example, schools are gun-free zones. There's a state law that forbids the carrying of guns on public school campuses, K through 12 schools. What would you suggest that there should be armed people, let's say armed teachers or staff, or is that your solution to gun violence, particularly with schools?
Red flag laws are unconstitutional. Let me just get that out of the way. If a teacher wants to carry a firearm or anybody in the school zone, obviously they're a teacher, they're hired, they're trusted with children. Have a set shooting like the FBI qualification for handgun. Have that set. If that teacher can pass that qualification, why should they not be allowed to carry a firearm? That way, A, we know they're trained and capable, and it's not just a random person carrying a firearm around kids. They're a capable shooter at that point, just a base. It could be the Kentucky State Police qualification, whatever qualification they want that teacher to shoot. And that would just put more protection outside of the one SRO we have in our schools. And yeah, I think that would make a lot of people think twice about trying to take a firearm into school to harm children.
Okay, very good. You are running against David Spencer in the primary. How do you, is that correct?
Brandon
David
Spencer.
I'm so sorry. Brandon Spencer. Got the wrong name here. Brandon Spencer is your primary challenger. Now, he won back in 2022. Since you ran against him before, you know something about him and where he stands on the issues. How do you differ from your primary opponent?
Mr. Spencer won this race, actually. He was the state representative for the 95th in, I think, 2007 or 8. He won the seat as a Democrat. Now, people can switch parties. I understand that. That's absolutely the more people that switch to Republican. I'm happy for them. I'm glad they do it. Now, Mr. Spencer ran that year, the year that Greg Stumbo ran for lieutenant governor, the state representative here prior to him. Mr. Stumbo lost that race, and Mr. Spencer stepped down right after Mr. Stumbo lost that race. And he gave an excuse why he stepped down. However, Steve Beshear, Mr. Stumbo, gave Mr. Spencer a state job as the assistant of secondary and rural roads that paid $60,000 a year in 2008, which according to Google is $87,500 in today's dollars. Now, I have the paperwork on that. Obviously, I wouldn't say it unless I had the cold hard facts. I've never sold anyone out, and I never will, not for $60,000 or a state job. As a matter of fact, I had to quit a state job. I was the pretrial officer for Floyd County to even be eligible to run. Mr. Spencer and I differ on many things. I hold my ground. What I say here is what I'll say everywhere. I change no stories. I do nothing different. I don't tell people what they want to hear. I tell people how I believe it should be, and then that's what it's going to be with me.
Okay.
He had the chance to do something good. every senator and every representative have a chance to do something good. Any one of them can submit a bill. That's not saying it's going to pass, but it will allow the people to see who's really about helping Kentuckians and who isn't.
Okay. So whoever emerges from this primary, either you or Brandon Spencer, will face Andrea Lafferty Tackett. She is considered a conservative Democrat, one of the few remaining Democrats in the Kentucky House. There's 20 of them, but she is considered conservative. How do you differ from Representative Tackett on the issues?
Ashley Tackett Lafferty, I don't know her very well. I don't know her very well at all. I've never sat down and spoke with her. My main issue is she really hasn't done anything. The road that was built here that they all take credit for, that was planned way back. That was funded way
Mm-hmm.
back. It ran
Okay.
out of money, as magically
Mm-hmm.
most state projects do in East Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
She's had the chance for the last several years to submit a lot of bills to try to make things better, and it's just not happened.
Okay.
I
I am
mean,
getting the names wrong up and down here. Ashley Tackert Lafferty.
yes,
Uh,
sir.
I should know better, so I apologize if Representative Lafferty is watching this program. uh, Anyways, so when it comes to the differences between Democrats and Republicans, it's clear at the national level that there is a stark difference when it comes to many of the social issues. It's like night and day. When it comes to foreign policy, there's a difference. When it comes to border security, there's a difference. But at the state level, many Democrats align with Republican values. Uh, so how would you distinguish yourself, David? How would you distinguish yourself from those who identify as conservative Democrats, like your current representative, when it comes to coal? Because she says that she's for coal, you say that you're for coal. She says that she's
Absolutely.
pro-life, you're pro-life. How would you distinguish yourself?
By actually trying to pass laws to support those things. Let's just take, for example, term limits. We should
Okay.
have term limits, but nobody has tried to write that bill to get it passed through. Uh, there's several things. We should be doing away with property and vehicle taxes. We're taxed to death, but nobody will write that bill. Nobody will try to pass that.
Okay.
Nobody wants to put every other representative on the spot to see how they'd vote on those things. And those are things that I will absolutely do. That's the first things I will do, is write a bill for term limits and write a bill to do away with property and vehicle taxes.
Okay. So signing a term limit pledge is something that you did. Apparently, you signed a pledge. What group was that with? Was there a particular group that put out a term limit pledge?
I'm not sure. I've had a lot of surveys to fill out, but that's the first bill I'd write, because too many people get too comfortable in certain seats, and it just turns into that the power goes to the head, and they get lazy, and they just don't do anything that benefits Kentuckians except for eat up tax money.
Kentucky is at a crossroads. We can choose to give in to the radical left, or we can choose to engage the culture in a God-honoring way.
I started the Commonwealth Policy Center because I believe that Christians have a responsibility to influence government and society to the glory of God. While the Commonwealth Policy Center's made a significant impact, our work isn't finished. If you'd like to join our movement working for timeless values, then head to our website.
To learn more, go to commonwealthpolicycenter.org.
Good. If you're just joining us, you are watching CPC's Candidate Forum. I'm Richard Nelson, your host, along with David Pennington, Republican candidate for House District 95. The primary is coming up on May the 21st. Voters will have a chance to elect a new state representative for District 95, which is Floyd County. David, you had mentioned that you think that the car registration fees should be dropped. Is that correct?
Both
Did I hear you
property
correct?
taxes, yes, vehicle registration and property taxes should absolutely be done away with.
So the sentiments there are that Kentuckians are paying too much in taxes. I think a lot of people would agree with that. However,
Absolutely.
car registration and vehicle property taxes, that goes to support roads. How would you make up for the loss in road funding if you
We'd
did
have
remove
to
those taxes? Mhm.
we'd have
Go
to
ahead.
restructure the entire tax system. We pay enough in taxes. Everything, the money you make is taxed. The money you spend is taxed. Everything is taxed. The fuel you put in your vehicle to get to work to make money.
Mhm.
Kentucky brings in enough tax revenue that we could take it a little easier on the working men and women. It's
Mhm.
just we need oversight. We need project oversight. We need to really restructure how we spend our tax money, and we need to spend it the correct way.
Mhm.
If that's the case, the roads in Kentucky will be perfect, and I can absolutely tell you they are not perfect in Floyd County, Kentucky.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that most would agree that there's a lot of improvement that can be done on the roads and on the bridges, in other infrastructure. And of course, the question is where does the money come from, and how much can Kentuckians afford, and how much would they be willing to pay? David, I'd like to move to a couple of issues that the state legislature has dealt with in the last couple of sessions.
Sure.
I want to go back to the Fairness in Women's Sports Act that was passed 2 sessions ago, and that kept boys, biological boys, off of girls' sports teams. The legislature did pass that. Governor Beshear vetoed it. Where do you stand on boys playing on girls' sports?
If you're a man, if you're born a man, you compete with men. If you're born a woman, you compete with women. Biological man, me at 6 foot, 230 pounds, should not be out there playing with females. It's an unfair advantage. Why should I be able to take scholarships, take accolades and awards, and potentially injure a woman where I can play with other men?
Mhm.
A man should not play in female sports.
Okay. Okay. Another bill that passed last legislative session dealt with transgender issues, Senate Bill 150, which stopped the teaching of gender ideology in schools, especially to young kids. It taught that, they were teaching that gender's fluid and that it's up to an individual to choose what gender they are. That's no longer allowed. That bill also kept boys out of girls' restrooms and locker rooms. And perhaps the most controversial part, or the part that got protests in the Capitol, was to stop minors from gender transitioning. These are kids and teenagers from using puberty blockers or pursuing gender surgery. Where would you stand on? Where would you have voted on that bill if you were in the state legislature?
Any teacher that tries to teach anything about gender to a child should be fired immediately. They should be jailed. That's up to the
Mhm.
parent. That's not up to the teacher. The teacher is there to educate them in the core subjects. No kid, when you're underage, you're not allowed to smoke cigarettes, you're not allowed to drink alcohol. Why should you be allowed to take a drug that will affect you the rest of your life? There are
Yeah.
many transgender people that converted and now have came out and wish they did not. It's ruined their bodies, it's ruined their minds. So no, you should not be allowed to do that.
Very good. Moving on to higher ed in our colleges and universities, many of them have DEI programs or offices. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there are a couple of bills in our state legislature right now that would push back against that. And one of the arguments is that equity means equality of outcomes. So there's been a strong push against that, not just in Kentucky, but in other states as well. Where do you stand on DEI policies?
DEI policy is not about equality, nor is it about equity. It's
Mhm.
about it's about the dislike of Caucasian individuals. Let's just call it what it is. That's exactly what it is. Colleges, unless they are private, are funded by tax dollars. The
Mhm.
people of this state should have to say exactly what
Mhm.
institutions of higher education have and what they don't have because we fund them. Without
Mhm.
us, they are not there.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be
Okay.
up to the college. It should be up to the taxpayer that funds them.
Okay. Uh, Tax policy, another big issue that the legislature's tackled for the last several sessions. There has been a move to eliminate the state income tax. Currently, it is at 4.5%, and it's on track to being phased out over the next several years. Where do you stand on phasing out the state income tax?
We should absolutely phase it out. We're taxed on everything we do, on anything we own. We should not have to pay the state because we have to make a dollar to feed our families. It's
Okay.
atrocious. It should have never happened to begin with.
Now, of course, when you reduce taxes in one area, if the budget is going to be similar, then you have to raise taxes or find a different way to raise revenue. So even as the state income tax is being phased out, there is a move to increase sales tax in certain areas. I think it's around 17 or so different services that are taxed in the Commonwealth. And there's a move to spread out that sales tax. Is that something that you're in favor of when it comes to finding a new way to bring in the revenue? And again, I think we can agree that the state has a budget, the state has obligations to provide roads and build bridges and to do things of that, like a prison system, fund the court system. And it takes resources to do that. But what would you be in favor of the sales tax, increasing sales tax and spreading it across different service industries?
Absolutely not. The revenue's
Okay.
there for roads, for infrastructure. You can, if you're from Eastern Kentucky, you're very familiar with the Mountain Parkway. We've seen the
Mm-hmm.
millions and millions and millions of dollars that are wasted there. Anytime there's a large project, money is pocketed. It don't matter, not just Kentucky, anywhere in this country. We need absolute budget reform, and we need serious oversight of however little penny is spent that the taxpayers put into the state. We need
Okay.
civilian oversight.
Okay. David, some legislators have argued that a way to bring in tax revenue in a painless way, at least they argue that, is through expanded gambling. And we've seen HHR, historical horse racing, legalized at the tracks a couple years ago. Last session, we saw the legalization of sports gambling. Is that a good revenue source to expand gambling and then for the state to take a cut out of that?
I think so. I don't gamble, but if you're an adult and you worked hard for your money and you want to gamble, you should be allowed to do so as a free American.
Okay. Now, that argument can be taken to other things that are currently not allowed by law. Recreational marijuana. Now, we have medical marijuana that's legal in Kentucky. What about legalizing recreational marijuana and then taxing it and then having that revenue go to the state?
Absolutely. We should have a set of laws, a lot like the DUI laws. It should be controlled like alcohol is. But yeah, recreational medical marijuana would be an excellent tax revenue for this state.
What would you say to people who see the drug problem? You're in the middle of the mountains in eastern Kentucky. You've got a terrible drug problem. Really, the entire state does. How do you respond to those who say, look, we already have a drug crisis. Why would we want to make it easier for people to introduce drugs, legalize it, and to possibly see more people develop an addiction? How would you respond to them?
Marijuana isn't the issue. Fentanyl, methamphetamine, heroin, that's the issue. Hard drugs. I've never seen anyone addicted to marijuana, and I don't smoke it personally, but I have plenty of friends that use it. I've seen it help a lot of veterans with PTSD. I've seen it help victims of domestic violence. I've seen it help retired first responders that have just flat out seen too much. Seen it help a lot of people, cancer patients, plenty of medical qualities. Marijuana is not fentanyl. It is not heroin. It is not anything. However, locally, when somebody is caught with some of these harder drugs, it's a rotating door at the jail cell. They go in, they go out. They get in trouble again, they go in, they go out, and it's a burden on the tax system. It's time to get rid of them and lock them up for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good. David, we are running out of time. If you would tell the voters why you're running, why you would appreciate their vote on May the 21st.
I'm running because I'm tired of seeing people elected soaking up our tax dollars and their salaries and not doing anything to better our lives in East Kentucky. They're there to represent us, not themselves. If by chance you would grace me with your vote and I am elected, there are certain bills that I will write. I can't guarantee that they're passed, but if they're not, people will get to see who is really there to work for them and who isn't. I'll write a bill for term limits, 2 terms. That's all a person should get. If you can't do your job in 2 terms, you don't need it. We'll write a bill to do away with property tax and vehicle tax, or something thereof. You pay tax when you buy it. You shouldn't pay tax on it for the rest of your life. And or you've worked hard for your property. You own it. 1 year you're short, you can't pay the taxes, and some idiot comes by and picks up your tax bill and it puts you in a bad spot. That should not be allowed. We need civilian oversight, like a rotating style civilian oversight committees on these large products and projects to make sure tax dollars are being spent the correct way. Mm-hmm. And there's several things that we need, and if you'd give me your vote, or if you want to reach out and talk to me about anything I stand on, anywhere I stand, I'd be more than happy to talk with you. And those are things that we will do.
Okay, very good. David Pennington, Republican candidate for House District 95. Thank you for joining the Commonwealth Policy Center on this candidate forum. Best wishes to you, and may God bless you on the campaign trail.
And you as well, sir. Thank you all for having me.